All right, what's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Learning Quick. Super excited to have another amazing guest in Vonta to talk about web vibes. I think is the title that we went with, which sounds
Yeah.
pretty cool. But I think we're talking a lot about like learning process and the teaching process and the relationship between those. What we've got out of teaching potentially in our careers. So anyway, welcome to the channel. Do you want to give people a little bit of an introduction to you and what you do?
Hi, yeah. So my name is Vonta. I'm a software developer in North Carolina, out in Raleigh. Right now, I teach at a code school named Alchemy Code Lab out of Portland, and I've been teaching and developing for like the last 5 or 6 years. Well, not teaching. Teaching's probably been the last year and a half, 2 years. But software development has been like last 5 or 6, and I've just like never looked back since I've started. So it's been real, and it's done a lot of amazing things for me too. So it's been
Nice.
good.
Yeah, I love that. Do you so thinking about like you said software development for 4 or 5 years or so, before we get into the teaching part, do you mind sharing people like what your learning journey, like what was your journey getting into tech? Do you have a degree? Were you self-taught? Did you go to a boot camp yourself?
Yeah, I actually did both. I went to school, but I went to school. I have a degree in management information systems,
Yeah.
which was related to tech, but I didn't actually learn any coding. But I got into
Yep.
coding probably around my junior year and started teaching myself. So after I graduated, I felt like I didn't know enough, like actual coding. So I went to a boot camp after. And my boot camp experience was terrible. Like they promised us after 6 weeks, I believe, that you would be like job ready and they would get you a job. And I was there for like 3 months, jobless and broke. So I started making a change after that. I went and got my own job. After those 3 months, I worked for a company called Foster Moore, right?
Okay.
And we built business registries, and we was using a language that only existed there. They called it rule script, right? Rule
Nice.
script. It only existed there. So, but I stayed there for a couple of years because I was learning
Yep.
there, and I started really teaching and leading there. Because in the second year I was working, I was running a team of about or leading a team of about 5 other developers
Wow.
and 3 or 4 testers. And you probably know the like the business analysts, the
Hmm.
project managers. Like I'm dealing with all that like my second like year. So it felt like I was just getting a lot of experience real quick.
Yeah. Well, and that's like it's there's just such a big difference in the boot camp process, which can be great. It can also not be so great depending on which one you go through, obviously. But then the learning, like the exponential learning of actually being on a job, is just that is exponential. Like you're forced to do all these things, forced to figure stuff out, and then you've got people around you that you can continue to learn from. I'm kind of curious, like it's unfortunate that that boot camp didn't work out in the way
Mm.
you expected. I think like job ready in 6 weeks honestly really doesn't make sense. Like if you look at most like full-time boot camps that really are getting you as close to job ready and hireable immediately after, they're usually 6 months full time. So 6 weeks is a very ambitious thing. And I think that's like part of the industry is like how like we can sell this to people and we can do it so fast. But the reality is like learning the skills to get that job in tech is really difficult, and it
Yeah.
takes longer than 6 weeks. So what kind of things did you do like on your own outside of the boot camp to help kind of fill that void that you missed from the boot camp itself?
I was doing a lot of programming on the side. That's pretty much it. Just doing a lot. And then I started getting real heavy around this time. It's like these like personal development and productivity type of books and
Yeah.
mindsets and all that stuff. So I started focusing like every day. I would probably like outside of the boot camp, I would put in probably like 3, 4, extra hours of just figuring stuff out basically on my own to kind of fill in those gaps. Because now looking back, yeah, 6 weeks, there was no way they were gonna get us ready,
Hmm.
all of us ready to have a job in 6 weeks.
Hmm.
Now that I have more experience, and yeah, that was a red flag for real.
Hmm.
Uh, but it's been yeah, that's pretty much just my process, just putting time and creating stuff. And then once I felt like I was ready, like at the end of the boot camp that I was at, because it wasn't the actual like teaching that was bad, it was pretty much everything else. Um, So, and after I started going on interviews and I started seeing like, okay, I do know some things that they're asking, I don't know others. And I would just go back and fill in my 2 or 3 hours I got set aside with stuff that people were actually asking me on interviews.
Yeah, that's such good advice because people are intimidated by interviews, understandably so. And then also it's very defeating when you feel like you don't do well in an interview. Like it feels shitty. But the good thing is like as you get more questions that you couldn't answer, that's just more insight for you of like what you can do to fill those gaps. Like that's just now getting more of the what like the answer key or whatever before the test of like knowing I need to prepare for these things and I've got these gaps. Um, so
It's
like
like
you talked
having a,
about, oh yeah, go ahead.
I was saying, yeah, it's like having like a living like study guide.
Hmm.
After every interview, you
It
just
just keeps
add, okay,
growing. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. A couple of comments on the chat. Lockheed is saying coding isn't easy. It requires a lot of studying and problem solving skills. Yes. Destin is saying it takes longer than 6 weeks at most companies just to onboard people, which I think is fair as well. Like I didn't really start contributing at my job at FedEx as a software developer, for example, until 6 weeks in. So 6 weeks is not that long of a time by any means.
no,
When you
no.
mentioned like writing a bunch of code, was this like were you trying to build like side projects? Where did you get ideas for that? Like what kind of code were you actually writing? Maybe technologies too would be fun. And then like what were those projects and how did you come up with those ideas?
Yeah, back then I was doing a lot of Udemy courses. This is around 2015, 16. Yeah, I would buy a Udemy course in a minute. As soon as
Hmm.
it went on sale, like if you've
All
been
the
on Udemy,
time.
they go, yeah, those $200, $300 courses are like $10 every
Yep.
other month or every other week, it feels like. So I'll just wait for one of those, grab a Udemy course and just go through that. And I will watch, and these are people that say like, "This is what I need to know," and I'll make sure that I would know it. And then, as far as finding like side projects to build, I would go straight to Google. What
Nice.
is a side project? If I couldn't think of nothing that I actually wanted, just go straight to Google side projects for JavaScript.
Hmm.
I would just find something in somebody's list or somebody's article that I thought I could do, and that was it.
Yeah, that's great. Because I think there's this mix for people of thinking that like the side project has to be the holy grail of like it has to be really amazing. And
Yeah,
like you definitely want to have some solid ones on your resume that you can say like, hey, this is a good example of what I'm capable of doing. But also like to get to that point, just build a bunch of random shit is like is like
yeah,
like I've done tic-tac-toe on my YouTube channel and I've done a couple other random ones just because I was like, I don't actually know right offhand how I would do this. So let me just like try and see where I get and figure out what I need to learn along the way. My dog hopefully doesn't bark much anymore. So I love that. Was it focused on like vanilla JavaScript for you? Were you doing frameworks or anything at the time? Like what was the stack that you were working with?
yeah. Back then it was all vanilla JavaScript for the
Hmm.
most part. I was just 100% on the like core JavaScript, and I figured wherever I went, I could just figure out like what else I needed to know. Cause I didn't want to spend, cause here around this time too, I think there was like still like a real big like debate, so to speak, on whether you should learn Angular or React or
Yeah.
Vue or whatever these frameworks. So instead of like picking one of those and like being wrong, right, I would just learn JavaScript, and whatever company is hiring me or thinking about hiring me, I would just learn whatever they're using.
Yep. That is. Yeah, I think some of the tech community's responsibility is to take the pressure off of being wrong in that decision, and because
Yeah.
like you're really not going to be. But the thing you can do is exactly what you said. Is just be informed of like, hey, I want to work at this company. They use Angular. I'm probably going to go study Angular, or they do React. I'm probably going to go study React. But I'm also really passionate about like for me, I think learning vanilla JavaScript and building some of those random side projects first with vanilla JavaScript helps make it easier to learn front end frameworks because you have a better understanding of what problems they're solving for you. And
Mhm.
then once you learn one front end framework, and if you understand what it's doing for you, how it works, less about the specific syntax, but more about what it does for you, learning going from React to Angular, React to Vue, React to Svelte, like it gets easier and easier the more you understand the concepts of what's going on, what it's trying to do for you um, than it is of like just trying to learn the specifics. So anyway, I think like wherever you start, you can go to the next one fairly easy as you start to get more experience and knowledge.
Yeah, definitely. Because I've been like seeing like some screenshots of like people on Twitter posting about like Web3 and coding with
Yeah.
the Solidity, right? Or
Yeah,
Solidify
stuff
or
I
something.
know nothing about, but I see
Yeah,
people
yeah.
post about it. Yeah.
Right, right. So and I like see like look at a screenshot of like a smart contract, and I was
Mhm.
like, okay, I've never seen this before, but I kind of could
Yeah.
tell what's going on. And that's kind of the point that you get at.
Hmm.
That like everything, yeah, they are all pretty similar if you ask me, right? If you can understand one, you just
Hmm.
need to translate like it's really not like the syntax or anything, it's just the logic of what it needs to do over
Hmm.
easy.
Yep. I'm a big, like, this is one of my like rants that I have is like nothing in this world is all that original. Like if you look at cars, right? Like Toyota, Honda, Nissan, whatever the different brands are, if you look at the evolution of their cars, like the smaller SUV and the bigger SUV, the smaller sedan and the bigger sedan, if you look at the evolution of that across the board, they're all pretty much doing the same thing every year. Like all the changes that are so unique are really not that unique across other brands. Like you can tell any car that I see, I can tell regardless of brand, the general time frame. Like it's 2005 to 2008 or so regardless of
Mhm.
which brand, just because that body style was that body style across the board. Same thing
Popular.
with like phones and frameworks. Like none of the stuff is really that unique in this world, honestly.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with you there. And that's easy. That's good. That's better for us, right?
Hmm.
So because this it feels like your time's not wasted. 'Cause I think that was what I was worried about. Feeling like I was wasting my time learning something I
Yep.
wasn't going to need. And also I was broke at this time. And being broke is like the strongest motivator for me anyway.
Hmm.
Cause I just don't want to don't want to live that life, right?
Yep. That's always been um that's always been one of my driving factors. Just like growing up, like my first job out of college, I made twice as much as my parents ever made combined. And there's like all of this is relative, right?
Right.
Um, but for me, that was what I knew I wanted to get to and continue to do because I didn't want money for me to be the stress that it was for my entire family and like my entire childhood. Like everything came with some sort of burden or some sort of decision about money. And so tech has like definitely enabled me to like change my relationship with money, to become more comfortable with money and to be able to handle things like as they come up without having to stress too much about it. So that was the big aspect of, I don't know that I didn't choose it because of that. I kind of lucked into it because I randomly chose computer science, but it certainly worked out that way.
Yeah. And especially getting into tech, it can really change your life.
Hmm.
With that Foster More company that I took out of the boot camp, I made 60K at my first job out of college,
Yeah.
and that was more money than I've ever seen in my life, and that was my
Yep.
first job, and my life changed like dramatically just with 60K, right?
Hmm.
And that was like the start,
Yep.
So
Yep. It is. So you also mentioned like the money is a hell of a motivator. Will Johnson actually just posted on Twitter in the like today or in the last couple of days. Will, if you have it handy, feel free to throw a link to that in the chat too. But I think he said like he was so motivated at that time with financially like needing to make that change, but also um he then said something really interesting that like he's now more motivated than he ever had been. I think just because out of excitement for what like just really enjoying what he's doing. And that's a cool evolution to have like motivation out of need and to evolve to like motivation out of excitement of what you're doing. So I thought that was really cool that he shared that.
yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. Because I feel like there's a lot of things you can't really worry about, or that's it's not going to feel as important to you if you're trying to survive.
Hmm.
So you have to get rid of like that first before you can like worry about some kind of grander purpose or coming up with something. I feel like anyway, because I feel like as long as you're like thinking about where I'm gonna eat, where I'm gonna
Hmm.
get my next meal from, where I'm gonna stay, something like that, you don't got time to focus on anything like outside of that.
Yep, absolutely. A couple of comments in the chat. First time chat from Baratitic. I don't know if you have a pronunciation, feel free to share that. But they said also we shouldn't skip the practicing. Sometimes I found myself in tutorial hell, like callback, maybe like callbacks in JavaScript, like callback hell, I guess.
Yeah.
Did you ever struggle with like going through those courses on Udemy? and maybe feeling like, were you ever like following the tutorial too much and not like internalizing that stuff? It sounded like you did a good job of finding like projects to work on to then build that yourself. But did you have any thoughts of like being in tutorial hell at that time and maybe missing out on some of the learning? Or did you go out of your way to apply that stuff that you learned in other places?
Nah, at the beginning, I was straight tutorial. Like
Yeah.
whatever they did, that's what I was doing.
Yep.
Yeah, just focused on tutorials and like the Udemy course, building up what they built. It was it was when I realized I needed to have projects of my own to show that I could do JavaScript actually, because I
Hmm.
was learning JavaScript in my boot camp. I go to my first job at Foster Moore and I'm working in like the fake language, not fake, I shouldn't say fake,
The
but the language they made up.
Yeah.
Right? So I can't carry it with me is what I'm saying.
Hmm.
So when I started thinking about my next role, I feel like I needed to prove that I know how to do JavaScript too, even though I've been doing like this other wacky thing for the
Hmm.
last few years. So that's what really like pushed me out of it to have my own stuff. But yeah, before that, yeah, tutorials.
Hmm.
I've been there. Now though, I will try not to, one to one like anything I'm watching, but I've got more experience now too, and it
Hmm.
makes more sense to me to do that.
Yep. And I can, like, as I watch tutorials and courses and stuff, which I still watch a lot. A lot of times I'm not even like hands-on following along. I'm just looking for a little bit of exposure. Like just like I kind of know the majority of how web applications work, for example,
Right.
that like how the
The
concepts
concept.
and the pieces and that sort of stuff. So now I'm just like, okay, what new tools are out there? What did I not know it could do? Like little tips and tricks and stuff. And Destin actually commented on this. A couple things about salary for him. His first tech job, QA, was 42K. Mind blowing, coming from retail making 23K, and this was in 2007. And then he said he started spending 1099 in the hopes of like one or two coding tips. Yeah, if you look at like investing in your career, there are a bunch of really incredible Udemy courses for $10 that you can take that really can like it. Like one in particular is the Web Developer Bootcamp by Colt Steele. That
Yeah.
legitimately changed my career because I had never done anything web development. I was scared of I was scared of JavaScript because it was like do whatever you want, and I didn't know how that would work. And I took that course, and now like I do web development 6 years later, or however long it is. So that course like literally changed my life and sparked me to do so many other things after. But at the time, like I was just following the tutorial as it was written.
Yeah, I can I think I got that same course too.
Hmm.
Hold on, let's see if we remember. It was making we made like a campground thing
Yep.
in it,
Yep.
right? Yes,
Exactly.
yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. After I did that tutorial and I felt like I could do anything
Hmm.
after that, really. I was like, I know everything I need, so I just need to go do some things with it. That's
Hmm.
what I felt like after that course. Yeah, Coach still reputation still going strong 6
That's
years
right.
later.
Yeah.
Shout out to him.
Yes. I've literally got a video of like on YouTube. I forget the title, but it's like this the best $10 I've ever spent was that course. But I've said exactly what you just said on many occasions of like thinking about like 6 weeks wasn't enough for you in your boot camp, which totally makes sense. When I look at the web developer boot camp by Cold Steel, like it's just a Udemy course, but if you learned all the things that are in that course, you're 100% like you're more than qualified for entry level job
It's at least
because
getting
it's
the door.
mhm,
Yeah.
yeah, because you've got everything. And this is actually a recommendation I make. Curious what you think is for people as they're learning and applying for jobs to try to do full stack. Like you may not want to do full stack long term, but I think having that visibility across front end and back end and databases, basics, and how those things fit together, I think that helps make you a better front end developer if you understand some of the back end and vice versa. So I always recommend people do a little bit of both, and that like that course is the perfect example of like you get everything that you could possibly need to be up and ready to go for a job, at however long it takes you to finish.
Yeah, I usually tell people to focus on one thing.
Hmm.
Focus on one thing, especially if you don't have a job or if you're trying to get, you're coming out of a boot camp and you feel like you're competing with everybody. I usually tell people to focus on one thing, get really good at it,
Hmm.
and make that like your thing, right?
Yep.
So just to get in the door. But I might only think that way because at the boot camp I did get some exposure to like some back end concepts and a little bit of SQL and that stuff, that type of thing. So maybe if I didn't do that, then yeah, get exposed to that, kind of be aware of it. But I think generally your advice is good, but like after that, my whole thing is just get something that you're good at and
Mhm.
really known for, just to get in the door. Because you need to make that jump. You need, like that feeling I had when I seen somebody send me a paper that said they want to pay me $60,000 a year. You want to see that, right? You want to see
Yep.
that first, and then just adjust and go from there. But get the money first.
Yep. Yeah, I think part of it for me is like looking at being hireable. A lot of like when I was at FedEx, I was full stack and just thinking about there being more opportunities in that realm. But I think maybe like a good way to combine those is like spend dedicated time learning front end. And then when you feel pretty comfortable, and you could still apply for jobs at that point too, but then
Yeah,
maybe spend like the next couple of months doing back end and like learning about that. So you're still like concentrating and not getting too distracting, but you're building up like the complementary skill set. And you, like I said, like you said, like you can apply, like if you get pretty good at React, you can apply based on that. And then just keep adding things to, like you said, your like ever growing backlog of things to learn. Like keep adding to that and keep building these complementary skills to open up more and more opportunities. And you can do your research to see like what languages, what frameworks, what tools are these jobs looking for, and go and learn those things based on what the company is using that you want to work for.
right, right. And I think there is like a category of things that everyone should know
Hmm.
before you try to focus on. So I feel you there, that this, like those like web concepts, routing,
Hmm.
database, client server, like even if you don't know exactly like how an API is built, you should know kind of like what it is. Just be ready to talk about it, or just be aware of it in case something they're asking you about involves, some kind of API you've never seen before.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And like you said too, like that's still a lot of that can still come on learning on the job too. Like I can't tell you how much like
Oh,
I
yeah,
had a
man, let's not underestimate. Let's not downplay that part either,
hmm.
right? You can just,
Yep.
after you get the job, then you can start learning whatever you want, as
Yep.
long as you know what you need to do for your job. And
Yep.
it's a lot more freeing too.
Yes. Yeah. When you have that stability, and like the downside of getting a job, some of it is not the most practical, but some of it is how do you game the system to get in there. And what I mean by gaming the system, like there's this big like debate about like by the way, Avnish, my Discord bot is not, or my Twitch bot is not running. And Vontae, I don't know if you've seen any of my streams, but I've got these lights back here. If I can get my hands right, they have Hue
That's
LED bulbs, which people can control from chat. But because of the Twitch, I had to reset my password. Now my token isn't valid for the bot, so it's not working. But
uh,
usually people can turn these on. So I apologize that that's not working for
did,
people in the chat.
did you have to reset your password because they got exposed?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, and I think technically they said that the passwords didn't get exposed, but their recommendation was to go ahead and reset them anyway. So I went ahead and reset it, and I just didn't update the token in my bot. Um, but right before that, we were talking about like kind of gaming the system. Like there's all this stuff about like, is whiteboarding the best way to gauge someone's abilities coming into a job, especially entry level? And I think there's a lot of debate about that that makes a lot of sense. Unfortunately, at the end of the day, like if you want an opportunity at a company that does that, you have to play that game, and you can study for it just like the ACT, right? Like
Yep.
ACT, you do practice problems and you go through it and you get tips, or you like work with a tutor or whatever. Like you can do the same stuff. And then gaming the system in terms of like keywords, like so many resumes just get overlooked because it's an automated scan looking for
Yep.
keywords. And you can make sure that like, hey, if they're looking for this keyword, go spend like 2 days learning a little bit about that thing, throw it on your resume. And you don't have to lie, you don't have to say I'm an expert in this thing, but you can say like, yeah, I've spent a little bit of time and I know what it is at the very least. So like playing that game of getting that visibility, getting in the door, and then hopefully having stuff that you could talk about like side projects in your interviews to get that first opportunity. And then now like you're in a safe space. Hopefully, if it's a good opportunity, you're in a safe space where you can learn there, you can learn on your own, you can follow more of your interests and not have to focus as much on how do I do the specific things that will get me the role. Now you can have a little bit more fun with it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's important. That's important when you're just starting to just do all those things and put them together to just find that first role. So
Mhm.
then you spend a couple of years in it, then you get to teaching and streaming like teaching and streaming like you, or you can go to teaching, like me.
Mhm. Well, now I
Or
mean, you may be on your way to streaming now that you've been on your first one. I don't know.
you know what? I've thought about it. I've thought about a couple things, but teaching is hard. Teaching is hard, and not like the streaming, but it's very hard
Mhm.
to make sure that every day you are on point, ready, and able to talk about
Yep.
all these concepts to people who have never heard of them before.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. It's a really tough thing to do. Um, we got a couple of comments. By the way, Sahil, I think, is first time chat. So thanks for being here and hanging out. Avnish is commenting on, like, if I'm doing a coding thing, and I've got VS Code open, there's a redemption in Twitch for them to change the theme of my VS Code. Again, like the bot's not working, but that's one of the ones that people have a lot of fun with. Also, and then
You got a lot
Destin,
going on. You got
yeah,
a lot going on in your streams.
it's fun. Yeah, I like, if you watch like other people have a lot more going on, but I do have a couple of cool things. But that's been fun to just like experiment, and like again use code for something that's like entertaining,
Mm,
not just, and a learning process, but not just because I have to, but because it's something I think would be cool.
yeah.
Destin is saying, talking about the automation on filtering resumes is 100% true. Um, uh, the what the trackers are looking for words now, it's all automated. Yeah, so making sure that you include those buzzwords as much as you can in your resume is
But
definitely.
but also like when you're trying to get that first job, networking,
Yes.
network,
Yep.
network. Gotta meet some people.
Yes.
Gotta meet somebody if you can. It's gonna be, if you're not like that type of person that likes to just randomly talk or message people, like there's like a little bit outside your comfort zone, you got to
Hmm.
go then. But it's so beneficial because a lot of the graduates at the school that I'm teaching at, they a lot of their first jobs are from networking.
Hmm. Yep, 100%. I recorded a video this morning on 5 tips for getting your first job, and there's like a combination of that into 2 different steps. One is engage in the community,
Mm,
and then the second one is like reach out to people. Like if you want to work at a company, reach out to a developer who works there and ask them questions. Reach out to the hiring manager and tell them that you're interested, because it's so much more difficult to apply blindly by just sending in a resume. If you just have one person that can say like, "Hey, we should take a look at this person," and give them an interview, that makes such a big difference. Because we like, especially early on, like you apply and you never hear anything back, or you apply and you hear a no. Like so much of that happens. It's just so hard unless you have the slightest bit of a connection for them to at least consider you and move to the interview step.
yeah, I believe. And if you don't, I think I've gotten all of my tech jobs through a recruiter, I believe. I think
Mm,
I've gotten pretty every single role through a recruiter.
okay.
And some people don't like recruiters. They've got bad, stories, but I just think of it as there's good and bad people at
Hmm.
every job.
Yep.
So, and good and bad companies as well. But the companies that I've typically worked with, they've been pretty great. And it's easier then because the recruiters, they do have an interest in getting you there, right? Or
Because that's how they
they
get paid.
exactly, they do
Yep.
have an interest. So there's going to be some motivation on their end to get you in, and they're already plugged in. They've got a voice there at the company because they've obviously like contracted them to find them somebody. So that's another way you can go if you don't want to talk to a lot of people. Just talk to one or two good recruiters.
Hmm. Yep. So, and part of that like bad reputation, again, it doesn't represent all recruiters by any means, but like the stereotypical stuff is like they send you like, we need 10 years of experience with React, and it's like React came out like 6 years ago, or someone there was this really famous one on LinkedIn where it's like, we need you to have 5 years of experience with this thing, and it was to the person who created the thing like 3 years ago. And like, what bigger way to shoot yourself in the foot than to be like really off, where they send you like me doing mostly JavaScript now, they send me like a .NET thing, and I'm like, I don't
Yeah,
use .NET, I'm not a good candidate for that. And someone sent me artificial, like they were like, based on your experience in artificial intelligence, we think you'd be a great fit. And I was like, that's funny because I have zero experience with that. You'd be really disappointed if you hired me. So that
right,
like
right.
there's plenty of that, but like recruiters are having that mutually beneficial relationship, especially with someone you trust, where they want to get you hired for your benefit and for theirs, and you want to get hired obviously for your benefit.
Mhm.
That can work out really well. I'll give a shout out to Taylor Dessen on Twitter, who is in Nashville, and he just has a totally different. He's not your average recruiter. Like he does live streams with developers. He asks developers questions. He's part of the community, and you can tell like he's not going about it the like stereotypical send a million emails a day and see who bites. Like he actually wants to learn about people and to help them get jobs. And that's the kind of person that
Right.
I think, to your point, like that will definitely be beneficial to have that relationship.
Exactly. Because you know what recruiters are doing all day besides talking to you? They're talking to a bunch of companies.
Hmm.
So if one doesn't work out, then maybe the next one will.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Destin is saying 100% of his jobs have come from people he meets or people he knew. So yeah,
Yeah.
that absolutely. That job description was lit meme. I wonder, Sahil may be referring to the thing I was talking about, where it was like, we need you to have experience um, with this thing, and he's like, I've only built
I
that
made
3
it.
years ago. Yeah, so
Right.
that may be
Right.
what he's referring to, which is pretty funny. Um, we got a couple minutes left. Do you have anything you want to share for yourself? Like anything you're working on, or a project, or while you're thinking about that, if you have anything. I'm gonna also throw your Twitter in the chat for people to go and check you out there too. But anything you want to share with people that you're working on or anything like that?
The only thing I'm working on really right now is getting better at teaching and getting into animations again with my guy Will,
Yeah.
the anime.js again, because I'm a big fan of anime and it just already had the name and it was animations. So but just getting into it, I've already like been learning a lot because Josh's course, I don't know how to say his last name.
I
Just go with
always
CSS for
yeah.
the developers. I don't know how.
I say Como. I don't know Como. I don't know if that's right though.
Okay, okay,
That's my
yeah.
guess. Yeah.
Sorry for getting your name wrong, but yeah, I'm definitely getting into that, plan to get into that and into animations, specifically just make cool things. That was my
Mhm.
motivation at the start to get into JavaScript and on the front end is just I like to just make things that I can show to people.
Yep.
It's hard to explain like why my API design is so great to people. If that's not a developer, they don't get it. But if I go here and show them something that it's moving, it looks good, it's got a whole bunch of stuff going on, just kind of flashy, just to show off, like people
Yep.
can understand that. Yeah, they understand, oh, that's what you do. I make all like this type of stuff happen.
All of that. That's me.
Yeah,
Have you seen Coach Carter?
yeah, 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 yeah.
When he like they had like gotten too cocky, and Samuel L. Jackson like gets really cocky during practice, and then he like looks down at his shoe and he's like, "You know who tied that? I tied that shit."
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
like one of my favorite quotes.
it's been a while since I've seen that too.
You should.
And one more thing. And
Yeah,
one
go
more
ahead.
thing. Like people who are just starting or even like getting into it, like you just got to give yourself time to like learn all this stuff. Again, I went to a
Mhm.
boot camp for 6 weeks that promised that I could get a job, and it went about as good as it sounds now. But everything that I like really get into that I want to learn, I just start off with saying I'm gonna give myself 6 months to kind of ingratiate myself into the community, like if there's a community around it and learning things. Because as soon as you start like really diving deep into like anything, you realize there's just so many things and so many concepts in that world that you've never heard of before until you're in it. So you
Mhm.
got to give yourself time to just kind of like fit into it all.
Yep. And it's like that, like that's one of the things I've realized outside of tech too. Like as I picked up different hobbies, like woodworking, that I started just like watching videos on YouTube. And now I have so many words that I never would have known or used
Yeah.
before. Or getting like my wife and I started playing golf about a year ago. And like we know so much more about golf that we never knew before. So every individual hobby or every individual language or framework or tool or whatever has all those details associated with it. And it definitely takes time to get into it and be comfortable with it.
Yeah, especially um if you no, I meant to say especially things that even seem kind of simple, right?
Mhm.
I don't think woodworking is simple, but you got some wood, you need to do some stuff with it, make it into something, right?
That's it,
But
right? That's it.
right, right. Sounds simple, but it's not easy.
Yep.
It's not sounds simple, but it's not easy. And when you go start learning about woodworking, for example, there's probably like all these like different rules that you need to follow for like different woods and
Mhm.
everything too. It's just a complete different universe.
Yep. Yeah, I 100% agree. And that's why things like YouTube are fun too, because you have like resources for any different topic um at your fingertips for you to start learning stuff. You can learn anything on YouTube.
Yeah, YouTube University.
Cool. Any as the last couple of seconds, any last thing you want to share with people?
Um, Not really. Just appreciate you having me on. This is like my first kind of live stream
Yeah.
event. And I really appreciate you for reaching out to me in the first place as well. And encouraging me to keep working on my blog for Hashnote. And
Mhm.
I do see a way that I can use Hashnote's API, but to
Sweet.
work on my blog.
Yeah.
And it's the Hashnote API is in GraphQL though. So now
Cool.
I have something else I need to
Now you
learn.
have to, yep.
That's just how it happens. That's just how it happens.
Yep, you go down the infinite rabbit hole of like thing to thing, which is part of the fun, but it's also a little bit
Yep.
intimidating, especially for a lot of people with so many things to learn. But that's
Right.
cool. I'm glad that seems like it'll work once you get into GraphQL.
Yeah, once I get time, but the time is coming. It's my birthday tomorrow though, so I ain't really working right now. I ain't gonna lie.
Yes.
Tomorrow, turning 30. So
Happy happy birthday. I forgot you told me about that in Twitter in our conversation. It's also my wife's birthday tomorrow. She's turning 31. So
wow.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
wild.
Yeah. Tell your wife happy birthday too. We're both Libras.
That's right. Yes, I will let her know. Cool. Well, I appreciate you coming on. I've said this like on other streams. Like this is literally my excuse to meet people and to learn about their backgrounds and to have fun conversations along the way. So I appreciate you being responsive to the random message of hey, you want to come on stream with me, especially being your first time.
Right.
And Destin, I think is saying looking forward to seeing you on Twitch. So maybe we'll give you a
Oh
gentle
yeah.
push to do some live streams yourself in the future.
Yeah. I feel like I don't mind like having people watching me, especially I feel like I'm live
After
streaming.
teaching. Yeah.
Yeah. For teaching 3 hours a day, basically,
Hmm.
I feel like I it's just the same thing
Hmm.
almost.
Yep.
So it's not out the question.
Absolutely. Well, hopefully we'll see that. I think people will be looking for it. Thanks everyone else for hanging out in the chat as well. I
Yeah, thank you.
will. I think I'll be back next week. I gotta check. I think I have one scheduled. So hopefully I'll be back next week. I'll be online sometime. Anyway, but I will catch everybody later. See ya.
All right, James.